Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Anukriti Sharma. I'm joining from India, and it is such a pleasure to have you all here. And we're especially excited to welcome Tony from iNaturalist. But before we get into that and before we get started, I just want to take a moment to briefly talk about citizen science in a couple of sentences. So it's about ordinary people like myself, like all of you, contributing to scientific research, whether it's observing plants, animals, weather patterns, or any other natural phenomena. And it helps scientists collect large amounts of valuable data and makes science more accessible to everyone. Now, this is a concept that can greatly advance the way the world deals with various environmental challenges. And lots of experts around the world and lots of citizens around the world, they recognize this. And for that reason, with the IUCN World Conservation Congress coming up this week, there were a few people that got together and they decided to hold a BioBlitz, which will run globally on iNaturalist for the entire duration of the IUCN World Conservation Congress. So that is from the 8th of October to the 15th of October. So if you're a user on iNaturalist, you can definitely be a part of this as well. You can venture out into the world around you. You can explore some nature and just snap pictures, record audio sounds, and upload that onto iNaturalist. It will give us a snapshot of life around us as we see it, all the while the world's largest congregation of naturalists and nature conservationists would be meeting to discuss the course of action for the next 4 years. So this is something super exciting that is going to be happening within the week. And I would encourage all of you to join the project. It's on iNaturalist. I'll be dropping the link in the chat. And another reason that we're doing this is so that, more and more people and more communities become aware of the fantastic app that iNaturalist is. It's more than an app at this point. It's a tool and it's a super helpful framework for all of citizen science for biodiversity right now. And the IUCN is a great platform to showcase iNaturalist. That is what we're trying to do here, which is why we started this series of webinars. We're starting with the first one today, and we will be having 2 or 3 more webinars, all to just talk more about citizen science, to spotlight iNaturalist, to spotlight how you can get involved and how iNaturalist can have uses for you, whether you're a citizen or whether you're a researcher or just someone who's trying to engage with their community. So with that, I would like to hand over to Ram. I've rambled on for a bit right now. So Ram, over to you.
Yes, so I have also put out the chats, the link of the project in the chat section. But as Anukriti said, basically, we are promoting this BioBlitz, which is happening during the IUCN World Conservation Congress. So during this period, this particular project is not only for Abu Dhabi, where this Congress is happening, but for all over the world. All the observations which will be, part of this project, they will be showcased at IUCN World Conservation Congress. We have a couple of screens put out there, and also a few other ways by which we will showcase, what people are doing all over, all over the global, all over the globe, where the while the World Conservation Congress is already happening. So let's show everyone what's the power of iNaturalist and what people have been doing, so that we can spread the word of citizen science further, and we can get more recognition to citizen science at IUCN as well. And this is being conducted as part of the IUCN's Citizen Science Task Force, who will be doing a couple of activities at the World Conservation Congress. So I would like to welcome all the participants again. If you have joined late, please introduce yourself in the chat section. I will start by introducing myself. My name is Ramdayal Vaishnav. I am Citizen Science and Engagement Head at the Naturalist School, an organization in India, and I'm also part of the IUCN's Citizen Science Task Force. And today I would like to welcome Tony to this webinar, the first of the webinars which we are doing for the IUCN World Conservation Congress project. So many of you might have already heard about Tony if you are in the, if you are active on iNaturalist, but to give you a little bit of his introduction from his profile on iNaturalist, he was born and raised in Hawaii, and he now lives in Oakland, California. And he's an experienced interpretive naturalist, photographer, and a counselor. He says he has been out with INET's outreach support and community engagement since 2015. Sorry, I wanted to say that he says that when he is not at work, he enjoys looking for but rarely finding reptiles and amphibians, which I think I will have to disagree. So with that, I would like to give it over to Tony so that he can talk about iNaturalist. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to put the questions in the chat section while he's giving his session, and we'll take these questions up after his talk is over. And others are also welcome to answer the questions which are put in the chat section. And after the talk is over, you can also ask the questions live. Over to you, Tony. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ram and Anukriti. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to me and to learn about iNaturalist. Let me share my screen and I'll get started. And yeah, happy to take some questions at the end. I'll try to wrap this up quickly, but there's a decent amount to go through. So we'll get started. Um, all right. All right. Are you guys able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so this is a photo I took of my wife within a lizard encounter in the desert, and that'll come up in a moment. I do want to say that I am friends with the co-founder of iNaturalist, Kenichi Ueda, and I was an original test user when it was a project at Berkeley in 2008. So it's kind of amazing, to think about where we were then and having people from all over the world join in and learn about it and use it now. It's kind of humbling. So I really appreciate all that. Um, so it just all right. We'll go through this. So I'm gonna kind of go over how iNet works, kind of what it is. I'm gonna show you how to use the app and briefly show you how to use the search on the website. Then I'll go over how iNaturalist data are being used around the world, and then happy to take some questions. So iNet or iNaturalist at its core is a social network, but instead of sharing, your photos of what you ate or a selfie, you are sharing photos or sounds of other organisms, non-human organisms, wild organisms, and placing a date and a time and a location on those observations and post them to iNaturalist. And once you do that, it becomes basically an observation, and other people can weigh in on it. They can help you with an ID. They can agree with your identification. They could disagree and tell you why. And people can also kind of vote on the data accuracy of it. And each one of these observations becomes a data point. And iNat data are open. We do have some restrictions for location kind of obscuration or making locations private for certain organisms, or if you want to do that for yourself, you can do that. But otherwise, data on iNat are open, and we try to get as much of our data into GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, as possible, which is home for a lot of data, including eBird and various museum collections, et cetera. And so, as I mentioned, I was kind of part of iNat from the beginning, just being very lucky. And I think what's interesting is that I know we mentioned citizen science a lot, and iNaturalist can be used for this kind of directed citizen science that I think a lot of us think of when we think of the word citizen science or community science, which is basically a top-down kind of thing. A researcher is like, okay, I have this question. I cannot gather all the data that I need to answer this question. I'm going to recruit people, non-scientists, to record this data and send it to me so I can answer my research question. And iNat can be used for that. Like people will ask people, researchers will ask people to say, hey, if you see this, please post it to iNaturalist, and I can use it for my research. But I think what's really important to think about iNat as is what's in the original, literally in the original document for iNat from Berkeley. And it says it's actually not citizen science, or at least not that kind of narrow definition of it. And by focusing instead on facilitating a lifestyle of data collection, iNaturalist encourages data contribution through the self-interest of an avid hobbyist. So basically, what we want to do is make iNaturalist a place where people every day are thinking about the life around them, the non-human life around them, and documenting and sharing that and learning about it. So it's not just a discrete like, okay, someone wants photos of this lizard, so I'm gonna take photos of this lizard. It's like, wow, I'm noticing all these things around me. I want to learn about them and share about them and help people who are researching about them who want to conserve them. It's about a day-to-day lifestyle of doing this. And I think that's a really important way to think about iNaturalist because once you kind of start doing this, it becomes something you just do all the time. You start noticing new things. People always tell us, I'm just learning so much about anywhere I am. I am learning about and noticing, lichens or bugs on flowers or bird calls. And I think that's really important to take away. Um, and I think to kind of go along with that, we are really focused on engagement and data. So there's kind of like two pillars here, and they kind of work together. We want to make sure iNat's open so that anyone who's interested in nature can, and who has basically a smartphone can make observations, record them, and maybe a world expert could also like look at that and identify it. And people could use these data because, we have the date, we have the location, we have the time, we have evidence, and these are real kind of vouchered observations that are scientific data. And it's not just a place to post pretty photos, but it's not just a place to be super rigorous um, and just focus on the data. It's a social network where people can really kind of discuss these things both in kind of a social way, but also a very data-centric way. And we've generated now a lot of observations, and the data are being used a lot. So just going by GBIF citations, we have over 6,800 publications have cited iNaturalist data, which is the most cited data set of the over 60,000 data sets in the GBIF database. So I think that kind of shows you that this approach is really working for generating data that are usable from a wide swath of people. So I mentioned observations a lot. I'm going to go and so I'm going to talk about what an observation actually is. I like to think of an observation as a start of a discussion. Basically, an observation has a few parts to it. It has media evidence. So this is the photograph my wife was taking that you saw earlier. This is a photograph of her encounter with this lizard. We have a date and a time when this encounter happened, and we have a location because thankfully almost all of our devices now are able to get a pretty precise location from GPS satellites. And so we have basically a specimen here, an encounter here that's being posted online. Anyone can look at the date, the time, location, and the evidence and come to their own conclusion about what this might be. And it's basically the person saying, here's what I saw, here's when and where I saw it, here's what I think it is, what do you think? And people can then add their own identification. So you can see she identified as a common chuckwalla, which is a pretty distinctive lizard in the southwestern United States. And another user came by and said, you know what, I agree, that's a common chuckwalla. And there were 5 identifications of this observation, all of common chuckwalla. So they all agreed, and this is now a research grade observation saying, okay, the data quality is high enough, and the community agrees at the species. So this is probably something that is good enough to be used for research. Now, if you're doing research, I'd always recommend to double check, but it's kind of how iNat works, is basically people collaborate toward finding the truth of each observation. Um, and I think that's really important to think about. We also, on each observation, have what we call a data quality assessment. And so you can see, yep, there was a date, there was a location, it has photos, it has an ID supported by 2 or more people. And then we have areas where people can actually vote. So let's say someone made a mistake, right? They took a photo of um, something something in the snow, but the date is actually during summer. Someone could say, oh, I don't think that date's accurate. They could write a comment and say, can you please change it? And they could vote no. They could also take a look at the location. Maybe the person made a mistake, right? And they put a dot in the middle of the ocean when they were editing the location, and it looks incorrect. And you could actually vote no for that, and that'll change the observation's data quality grade to casual, meaning like, you know what, there's something here that's probably not good enough to be used for research. And anyone can vote yes or no on these things. And again, this is like a way for an entire community to collaborate toward getting closer to the truth. And I think there aren't too many social networks online that are actually geared and oriented toward people trying to find the truth. In fact, it's probably the opposite for a lot of social media. So I think this is a really interesting and unique aspect of iNaturalist. And like I said, every observation becomes a data point. So here are all the common chuckwalla observations on a naturalist. And you can kind of see where they range, all the way down to the south of Baja California, east into Utah and Arizona. But, obviously missing these mountains here, staying kind of lower down. And, there are about 8,000 observations of chuckwallas made by 3,700 people. So I think it's really interesting just to, we are seeing in real time where these organisms are occurring, when and where they're occurring, I should note. And kind of zooming out, these are all the current verifiable observations on iNaturalist. We have about 278 million, and they represent right now about 536,000 species made by almost 4 million people. And they're covering most of the Earth. Obviously, the more populous and populated places are where we have more observations. Areas like the Sahara and northern Siberia are less covered, but we're working on filling those gaps as much as we can. And, the more people we have on the ground making observations and more people we have making IDs, the more we can actually start really documenting more and more of the biodiversity of Earth. Here's just a snapshot of 1 hour on a naturalist from a few years ago. In that hour, about 5,400 new observations were added. These are the dots you see. About 12,000 new identifications were added. So these arcs are identifications from the identifier to where the observation was made. You can see people, I think it's so cool because this is literally a map of people helping each other around the entire world, right? Some of these people are helping, like, this looks like it's from maybe North America, helping someone in Europe. Um, and, people in Africa being helped by other people and vice versa. So it's really an amazing kind of map of people collaborating toward understanding and learning about nature. I'm going to zoom in on one of these interactions really quickly. This is my friend Carlos Velasco. This was in Penang, Malaysia, when we were there for a National Geographic workshop. He's a botanist in Monterrey, Mexico. Um, and he has made a little project for his house. His wife works with native bees, and so they have a lot of native plants around their yard. And they are basically documenting everything they see around their house. And since they started their project, they've made over 2,800 observations in this tiny urban area. And I think they're getting close to 900 species. I think it was 888 this morning when I checked. So this is just in one area. And this is just people wondering what's happening around my house. What kind of wildlife is around here? And so in 2020, Carlos's father saw and heard probably this tree cricket. He took a photo. It was posted to iNaturalist. Um, and this woman, Nancy, who's in Wisconsin in the United States, and who is a tree cricket enthusiast, and you can see all the photos behind her, she looks at every tree cricket observation on iNaturalist and tries to identify them. So she's an expert. And she wrote a comment saying, you know what, I think this cricket is one that doesn't match any described species in Mexico right now. This could be a new species. If you see it again, let's try and collect it, and let's see if we can work together to see if it is in fact a new species. So they were able to find a new one, a male. So they were able to record his calls, which is diagnostic. And also, this was in 2020, 2021 when travel wasn't really possible. So over Zoom, Nancy was able to kind of like coach Carlos, who hadn't really dissected insects before, how to dissect it and photograph the diagnostic parts of its anatomy, and send to her. And they did collaborate and describe a new species. And this is just from, one person's backyard in a big city in Mexico. And so these kind of things happen all the time on iNaturalist. We're getting new species described quite often. And this is just because people are interested enough to stop, photograph, and share what they see and post it to iNat. And this allows people around the world to take a look and make these connections between an expert and someone who's an amateur or someone who maybe is not super knowledgeable in this area. I think it's just a really kind of great example of collaboration. Um, So with that, I'm going to just show you quickly how to use iNaturalist. Let me close this. Are you able to see the app right now?
Yes.
All right, so this is our new iPhone app. It will eventually be coming to Android. It's not there right now. So I don't want to, don't get hung up on the specifics. Just kind of, because they're going to be different depending on your platform, but they're going to be, the principles are going to be the same. So iNat's about getting evidence, right? And it's about, let's see here. And that's about gathering evidence and just making sure you get an ID and putting it out there. So really quickly, um, let's say I'm outside and I see something and I want to take a photo of it. I can tap on this little AI camera thing and open up my camera. Hopefully you'll see that on the left. And now we'll show infinity. Um, and basically, our camera in our new app basically will give you live ID suggestions. So once you start scanning something, you can see it says common checkered skipper, and it'll suggest this as an identification. You can then take a photo, and then it'll save your date, time, and location. Because this is a big public speech, I'm not going to be doing that right now because I don't want to divulge where I live. But what you can also do is you can import a photo. So I'm going to open up my phone gallery and please don't put your pets on iNat. They are very cute, but um, iNat's for wild organisms. I can choose a photo to import. So here's a giant beetle that we saw in Mexico a few weeks ago. I'll tap it and iNat will import it and it will try to identify it. And so it's going to say, okay, we're pretty sure this is in the genus Megasoma. We're about 94% confidence. Here are some other photos of this genus. And here's where it's been seen in relation to where this observation was. And so I've got my date, my time, and my location. I can also look and see some other options, but let's just say I want to stick to genus right now. I can save, and there we go. I can tap the up arrow on the app right over here to upload it if I want to. I could also edit it if I want. I could tap on it, tap the pencil to edit it, and I could say, like, wow. Um, and then I could just upload it. And once it's done uploading, that means anyone can see it and they can weigh in on the observation and add identification to it. It becomes a point on the map and it becomes a start of a discussion. And I think that's basically it. That's how you use iNaturalist. You take a photo, you can take multiple photos if you want and post into the same observation. Um, you can also, if you want to, hold down on this and you can tap on the record button. Let's say you can't take a photograph of a bird, but you're hearing a call. You can record that sound and you can post it to iNaturalist. iNaturalist won't provide an ID suggestion, but if you kind of identify it as a bird, people looking for birds to identify, a lot of them are really good at bird calls. I'm not, and they can help identify that bird. So that's a accessible way for someone to get a bird observation, even if they don't have a fancy camera. That's basically how to make an observation in the app. You want to make sure that the app has access to your location, of course, so that it can get that, and to your camera and to your photo gallery. We don't snoop in your photos. We don't like sell our user data. We're a nonprofit organization, so um, it's fine to give those permissions, assuming you're good with that. Now let's just show you the website because the apps are mostly made for making observations in the field. The website is really where a lot of the power comes from. So if I go back to explore, I can see all observations on iNat. Might take a moment. You can see how many I have, how many are on the website. And there are different views, right? There was the map view I showed earlier. There's this grid view, which kind of emphasizes photos. And then there's this list view, which emphasizes a list. And then I could also do something like look up a project. So if I wanted to look up the Asia Nature Challenge, Um, I could view all the observations just in that project. And this is what's running right now. I can click on one. And I can see the date, the time, location. This one doesn't have an ID. It's almost always good to make an identification if you can. So Um, I can try and help this person out. I don't really know much about plants in India, so I can get some suggestions here, or I could even just do something like, I know this is a flowering plant. And then anyone who's looking to identify plants in India, this will come up for them. So it's always good to have an identification that kind of helps people sort and find the observations. And let's just say I wanted to only see the snakes because I like snakes in the Asia Nature Challenge. I could look up snakes here. Then I could see there's been 384 observations of 156 species. Or I can just look up the birds. And let's say I wanted to use these data for research, right? Once I get the set of observations that I'm interested in. So let's say I'm really interested in the birds from this project. I can go over here to filters, click on that, and I go to download. And I can refine my search if I want, and then I can choose which data columns I want. And once I do that, I can export it as a CSV document and then open up in like a spreadsheet program or a GIS program, etc., and really play with the data if I want. This isn't a way to download photos. This is just downloading observation data. But this is a really good step for how to just export data that you can play with from iNaturalist. You can also do it via GBIF directly. They have much more extensive kind of data searching and export tools. And really quickly, if you are pretty good at identifying things, you can click on Identify. And this is an easy way to go through observations to identify them. So you can kind of like filter by, I'm pretty good at things in California and pretty good at looking at identifying lizards in California. So I've filtered by lizards in California, and then I can go through these. If there's one that I think I can identify, I can use keyboard shortcuts like A to agree, because I know this is a Western whiptail. And it's now research grade. I can go to the next one using my arrow keys, and I know that one's correct. And so it's an easy way for you to help out a lot of people at once. Although please do make sure that when you add an ID, that you are really sure you know what it is and it's not like a lookalike or something else. And you can identify it at any taxonomic level. So maybe you don't know which species it is, but you know it's in genus X or in family X. You can identify to that level if you want. So I think that's about it for how to use iNat. Let me go back to my slides. Slideshow. All right. Looks like people are accidentally drawing notes, maybe. All right, so here's how iNat data are used. So how does iNat compare to other data sets? So we're looking at data sets at species occurrences in GBIF from 2015 to 2024. So like new species occurrences, not old museum ones, which are also really helpful. But where are species occurrence data coming from now? iNat is way out here on the right. If you look at number of species, during this time period, nearly 400,000 species were added to the Global Biodiversity Index Facility, Information Facility. Compared to other large publishers, it's a huge outlier. Compared to eBird, eBird is a great place for bird data, to generate bird data. And obviously, they generate tons and tons of observations of birds at about 1.2 million. However, because it's just birds, that's capped off at about 11,000 species or so. And so iNat kind of like has fewer observations for sure, but it's really good at censusing, hundreds of thousands of species around the world. And I think that's really, really important to consider. And how are these data being used? Well, sometimes species are rediscovered. So Pranav here in, I believe, the eastern part of India, they're in the City Nature Challenge this year. He and his East Coast conservation team, they have a few projects on iNaturalist, really looking at intertidal life in Andhra Pradesh. And they found this little sea slug. And this was, as far as we know, the first documentation of this sea slug in about 150 years, since it was documented in 1862. So once you have more people out there really looking and you're able to kind of post these online and get experts to take a look at them, you never know what you're going to find. Many observations are just, of a pigeon. And those are helpful data as well, but sometimes it's something really amazing, like this rediscovery of this tiny little sea slug. And I think they found at least two or three more since this one was rediscovered. All right, so this flower is this flower only blooms during one part of the year. And you can kind of get a sense of when it's blooming just because people like it, they photograph it, they post it to iNaturalist. There's no specific outreach for this, but we took a look and in 2016 and 2017, it was blooming about 3 weeks earlier in the year than it was in 2014, 2015. You probably have to massage this data and really kind of clean it up a bit, but it's this kind of like I know it's almost like a sensor to like tell you what's happening um, on the planet and to really allow you to kind of like see what may be interesting, what may be really useful in kind of digging into deeper. Um, uh, and aside from just spatial temporal data, iNet photos record behavior. So this is a mating hold by alligator lizards in California, and um, it was only documented about 3 times in the past. It's now been documented well over 300 times on iNaturalist. Greg Pauly, who's a herpetologist in Los Angeles, he reaches out to people, asks them to look out for this, post iNaturalist, and he'll actually follow up with people um, to try and understand how long these things last. For instance, I think a few years ago, um, one person kept checking in on a mating hold and it lasted 46 hours, which was impressive. And that's these are behaviors we were not aware of before, and that we're kind of gathering through iNaturalist. Um, Also, phenology data, such as when a plant is flowering or fruiting, is becoming more and more vital to understanding how climate change is affecting the planet. So, for example, these Joshua trees in Southern California, they're pollinated only by a certain species of moth. And so if they flower when the moth is not flying, they won't get pollinated. And a few years ago, during some kind of weird weather, they started blooming months earlier than usual. And so a group of people are trying to figure out how to model and understand when they might be blooming during a different time of year. And so they went through a whole bunch of INAT observations, noted when they were flowering, when they were fruiting, and added to a model along with like elevation, rain data, temperature data to start understanding if they could predict when these events might happen. And so these data are all there in the pictures, right? And you can combine them with other data like weather, like elevation, to really get a good understanding of what's happening. Also, photo data. This is really cool. This came out a few months ago. Growing up in Hawaii, I was stung by Portuguese man o' wars or blue bottle all the time. So this is near and dear to my heart. And for a long time, I think there was about 3 species of Portuguese man o' war. They got lumped into one species. And now a group of scientists did a whole bunch of genetic data and found that there were at least 4 distinct genetic lineages among this what we thought was one species. And then they went through, I think, about 4,000 INAT photos. Because remember, this is a species that you can't really get a good look at in a museum, right? It's going to dry up, the colors are going to change. Um, its shape is going to totally deform. And so what they did was they found all these photos of, living or recently dead blue bottles and linked them to kind of various areas on the planet from where these genetic lineages come from. They were able to actually come up with split it up into 4 species, the 3 kind of original ones that it was split into, and a totally new species. And this would not be possible from like museum data. These are possible because people posted real-time data of this creature, and and these photos were good enough to be kind of used for scientists to understand, okay, what are the differences? And now, and so the visual differences or the genetic differences were also phenological or morphological differences, showing that not only were they different genetically, they were different as far as their morphology goes, which I think is just kind of an amazing thing. Finally, INAT can be used to um, for directly for conservation. Here in California, there is a population of newts, and in the summer they live underground here on the hillside. in the winter when it starts raining, they migrate toward this reservoir, which is where they breed. And this is a busy enough road that a lot of them do unfortunately get hit by cars. Um, and so there's been a group for the past, I don't know how many years now, going out there and scientifically using iNat to record newt roadkill. A pretty grim job. And this is just one day's worth of roadkill observations, unfortunately. But they were able to present their findings to local policymakers, and they are now looking at making, I think, several underpasses for the newts to go through to mitigate some of this roadkill loss and help the newts, continue to thrive in this location. So these data are being used directly for conservation. And finally, like I kind of coming full circle, iNat's not just about data. It is about helping people understand um, and appreciate nature, right? And so these are just a few testimonials I took from social media, and I think maybe our forum of people who are just like, this has really helped me. A lot of people said during the pandemic when they were kind of couldn't go anywhere except maybe around their yard or their neighborhood, it provided something for them to do to kind of like start learning about where they live. And I will say it makes people hike really slowly, which can be both good and bad. Um, but it helps, I think, create and reinforce this connection with nature that I think is a really good thing. People who are more connected to nature will be able to will be advocating for its conservation, I think, a lot more, and hopefully make better choices about how to conserve nature. And that's basically it. I hope that went okay. Thank you for listening, and I'm going to stop sharing for now, although I'm happy to, if there's any questions that I can answer using the website, I will do that.
Yes,
But
thank you. Thank you very much, Tony, for a really wonderful talk. So we already had a couple of questions in the chat section, and I think we have tried to answer a few of them. I think one of the things people are interested to know about is where to get this presentation, or how can we talk to others about iNaturalist the way you do. So that is where we introduce them to Ambassador program. But if you want to add any other things or want to talk about Ambassadors program.
um, yeah, so one thing we have lacked for a long time is just kind of outreach resources. We hired, let's see if I can find it. We hired Allison Young, who's been doing an amazing job of making resources for iNaturalist outreach, and you can find those.
And she was
Right.
also part of the Signature Challenge program, so she has been in touch with many of us in past
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. So probably the best place to start would be there. Um, one thing I will say is that I think a lot of people they'll start they'll join a naturalist and they immediately want to maybe do a project for like their school for their park, but because they don't really know how iNaturalist works, they're not able to really tell people how to use it best. They're not able to kind of answer people's questions when maybe when they come across a problem or something. So I think by far the number one best thing to do if you're wanting to do outreach with iNaturalist is to use it yourself, use it for a few weeks, get to understand how it works, how to respond to maybe common questions that might come up. If you want to make a project, I suggest making a test one, like maybe for a BioBlitz, and just having a few people use it, just so you understand how it works, what might not work, whether you might need to get like, oh, maybe I need a Wi-Fi hotspot here because no one has there's no connection to upload, and just kind of going through those paces before doing more kind of sustained and bigger outreach.
Yeah. If anyone has any questions, you can put in the chat section. I'll unmute you if you want to unmute yourself. I'll have to give you permission for that.
Hey,
So,
Tony, so I have a question. So I'm kind of really interested in how long these observations stay on iNaturalist as a platform because the platform's growing. So I'm sure that at some point you might need to archive older ones or not have them there anymore. That's something that I've been wondering, and I haven't been able to find an answer online when I search. So maybe if you could just shed some light on that.
That's a good question. Yeah, we don't have any plans to get rid of any observations, or to like archive them. I suppose, I mean, I can't make any promises. I can't imagine we would just like start deleting observations. That would be pretty antithetical to what we do.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering because I
I
would hate for the observations to go away from the platform.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting to think about. But it's possible that maybe at some point, we could start archiving maybe older observations, something like, like, okay, we have enough mallard observations. We're gonna archive some. They'll still be available, but they maybe won't be in the search index right away or something, just to make things more usable.
Mhm, mhm.
But beyond that, I don't have any details. I'm sorry. But I don't think we'll be deleting anything.
Yeah, that's great. So, do you think that's happening anytime soon, though, like the kind of volume of observations that I'm talking about here?
I don't really know. I think, that would probably be lower on our list of things we'd want to do to to address some of the like just the issues that we're gonna have to just as we scale, like
Yeah,
how to address some of these issues. But I think that would be pretty low on options we'd like to go with.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Because as someone who keeps thinking about, making citizen science more popular and making more people aware about it, this is something that I think I worry about a lot.
And
No, no,
but coming from the IT background, I don't really think we would have to worry about things like this. The kind of, the way computing power is increasing these days, maybe
yeah.
the technology will also keep improving along with the scale of observations and their volume.
I suspect that storage is not the issue. I suspect it's our search database and also just like how do you display these on the map so that it's actually usable. And
Mm,
like maybe, like right now it's, even if you zoom in, like some areas like San Francisco is so covered with pins, even if you zoom in closely,
mm,
you can't really see labels on the map on the actual map
yes.
tile. So like
Right.
maybe like a way to like, okay, turn off the pins for now while I find my location.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably more user interface changes that are probably something that need to happen more so than like removing data or something would be my guess.
On the similar lines, we have a question from Ashwin in the chat. He is asking, I was wondering, what do you do with the casual data set? It just keeps piling up without
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, so we don't get rid so in iNaturalist, if an observation is if so you remember I mentioned the data quality assessment. So let's say an observation is there and the community votes that the location is inaccurate, or they vote that it's not a wild organism. Remember, iNat's about wild organisms. Um, and we also want to make sure our range maps are accurate as far as like wild organisms. Like for a few years ago, I started seeing a whole bunch of Komodo dragon observations in California, and I was like, that's not right. And it was a bunch of kids at a zoo posting photos and not marking them as captive. And so, so for a moment there, like the Komodo dragon range was Indonesia and California, which was not accurate, right? So I voted those as captive. They become what we call casual grade, and casual grade observations are not, um, they don't turn up in searches or maps by default. You can choose to include them in your searches, but by default, we kind of like say it, we kind of just push them to the side. We have no plans to get rid of casual grade observations. Maybe they've been marked falsely, and maybe they actually are wild for one. Another is that there's probably a lot of good data there too. We could,
What about
maybe maybe
what about
there,
plants? What about
yeah,
plants? Because if they're um,
like garden plants.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think those are data that people I think still want to use. It's
yep,
not, I think it's more like it's less relevant to what a naturalist wants to do and wants people to do, but I think they're still interesting and I think they're still valuable. And I think we don't want to just kind of like tell people these are just completely worthless. It's just like they're not relevant, they're less relevant to what iNaturalist is for. So we don't really have a plan to get rid of them, would be my answer.
yeah. I mean, in terms of the captive animal, this makes sense, but in terms of the cultivated plants, or especially the ones which is like just being introduced in that area, then it
Yeah.
becomes more relevant, especially when you are talking about documentation, etc.
Yeah. And so, maybe there's a plant that escapes from a garden
Hmm.
and starts growing and starts becoming naturalized in an area. I think having the data that shows maybe, okay, this plant was in this garden, whatever, 2 years before we started noticing in the wild. I think those are useful data as well. We still want to make sure that those we don't count those as wild organisms, but I think the data, since the data is there, I think it can be useful, especially if you're kind of investigating those kind of things.
Yes. We have a question from Austin. How exactly can I use the annotation feature on the website?
Okay, so let me share my screen again. So um, annotations are little bits of metadata that they're taxon specific and they can be added to an observation. Um, so let's see. It's a good one here. Um, okay, so here's a fly I saw in Mexico, right? And if I scroll down to it on the website, you can see, and I'm pretty anal about adding annotations to all my observations. So there's a few labels I can add to this, right? So is it alive or dead? I added, let me just remove these for now. So you come across an observation, there's no annotations on it. And again, these are just little things that can help you kind of um, filter observations. And especially if you want to do research or kind of understand seasonality. So, okay, so this is alive. I'm gonna mark it as alive. Um, I added this evidence of presence annotation a few years ago. So like in case all you see is a gall or all you see is scat or a track, you can add that. But this is the organism itself. And especially helpful with like insects is life stage, right? So this is what an adult looks like. This is the time of year when you might see an adult as opposed to maybe a larva. So I can add this as an adult. I don't know, I don't know how to determine if this is a male or female, so I'm just not going to add that. So what's really cool is, okay, I've annotated this observation. If I go to this genus's taxon page and I want to look at photos of it, probably doesn't make a big difference for flies, but let's say I only want to look at adults. I can now look at observations of this genus that have been annotated as an adult, which is pretty cool. It's a bit more powerful for something like caterpillar for butterflies where people see caterpillars pretty often, right? So for right now, I've still got it filtered to adults. So these are monarch observations. These are adult monarchs. But let's say I want to know what the caterpillar looks like. I could change this to larva. And now I'm seeing observations of monarch larva. So I could get a better sense of, okay, this is what the larva looks like. And what's also really cool is on each taxon page, you can get like, we have these graphs and you can do like life stage. It's going to take a moment to load. If it does, hopefully it does. This is a very observed tax. So you can see seasonally when people are seeing adults, when they're seeing larvae. This is for the world, but let's say I just want to, oops, I just want to see the observations in California and understand maybe its seasonality and its life stage. California. I go to life stage. And I can see, okay, in California, it looks like observations of adults peak around here, maybe a steady larva one. Anyway, it just allows people to filter observations by more, what should I say? More criteria, basically. And so you can add annotations one at a time to an observation like I did with my fly. If you really want to, what I do is I use our identify page. And let's say, you know what, I want to go through and I want to annotate butterflies and moths by life stage. I can actually go here. I can filter and say, okay, I want observations of butterflies and moths without a life stage annotation. And I'll filter there. If I go to annotations here, I can start annotating it. So, okay, this is an adult. I'll do LA and it annotates it as an adult. And I can do that over and over again if I want. And this can really help kind of just add more data to our database. Okay, here's a caterpillar. If I do LL, it's a larva. And so this just kind of helps. Again, this will be helpful if you want to use those photo browsers. if you want to use those seasonality graphs. And you can also filter by these and export data of, okay, I only want data of adults or something like that. And it's just another way to add data. Maybe I'm not an expert in butterflies, but I can tell the difference between an adult and a larva. This is something we tell teachers to have students do because maybe they're not good at ID, but they can know the difference between an adult and a larva and contribute data that way. Hope that's helpful, Ashwin.
Yes, and there are two questions in the end. I think both are slightly related. How do I flag duplicate copyrighted observations I find? And the second question is, how do you prevent abuse? Is there a content moderation team?
Okay. Let me do, yeah, I guess those are both kind of about flagging. So let me share my screen again. All right. So people will sometimes either because they didn't get a photo and they think it's okay to post maybe a photo they find online that represents what they saw, or sometimes people just steal photos from others, maybe for a school project, um, and we recommend not making like research grade observations part of a school project, or really not using numbers a lot for school projects. We really recommend that to use iNat more as like a way to like think about how to observe things and how to think about data rather than just say, okay, make 50 observations, because students will eventually steal photos because it's related to their grade. Um, but anyway, people do sometimes post photos that they don't own. And what you can do is you can actually flag a photo. So here's my own observation. But on the website, you can see at the bottom of every photograph or sound, there's a little flag icon. You can flag it. You can flag if it's spam, if it's offensive, or you can flag it as copyright infringement if you know that it was stolen from somewhere else. And you can click save. And what that does is it replaces the photo and it makes the observation casual grade. And when I do this, I usually like to say, I'll use like a reverse image search and I'll say, okay, this photo was taken from somewhere else. And I'll link to the results of an image search or a page where it was taken from. So I'm, showing my work and showing evidence of where this photo was taken. And so that's how you can do that. Usually if it's a new user, I try to tell them, hey, this isn't how you use iNaturalist. And we always say assume that others mean well. And so please do that. Don't just go out and accuse people of being a terrible person. A lot of times these are just mistakes that people make. More broadly about abuse, as far as we know, it's not something that's happened all that often on iNaturalist, but like any social network, it does happen. A few things to think about is every observation you post is an observation of where you were at a time and place. So if there's a park you go to regularly, you may, so someone could find out, okay, this person goes here every Wednesday at 5 p.m., which, is a potential safety issue. I am sometimes a target of abuse because I'm the head moderator on iNaturalist, and so I obscure everything around my house. You can see I live somewhere in the East Bay, um, but you can't really see where I live exactly. Um, if someone, for instance, okay, so this person wrote a very nice comment and helped me about identification. But let's say this comment was an abusive comment or an insult. You can go to any comment and you can right click here and you can flag it. And a curator, we have a set of volunteers who help moderate on iNaturalist. They can come by and they can look at the flag. They can decide whether or not they want to hide it. Most people won't see this hide content option. I see it because I'm a staff member. But yeah, that's how you can flag something for review. And it could be hidden. The user could be warned. If it's a pattern or if it's something really bad, it could be they could be suspended. Um, so yeah, you can flag almost anything on iNaturalist. You can flag the observation itself. You can flag the observation as inappropriate right here. And yes, there's a moderation team. It's headed mostly by me. And there's a bunch of volunteer moderators and other staff members will also weigh in on more difficult decisions. You can also mute and block other users. The interesting thing about blocking is that because every observation on iNat is publicly available, even if you're not logged in. It really doesn't prevent people from seeing your observations. It prevents interaction on iNaturalist. So if you block someone, they can't comment on your content. You can't comment on their content. If you block them, their observations won't come up in your searches. Those are kind of the main parts of blocking. This is all available on help.inaturalist.org if you want to learn more details about it. But yes, if something happens, flag it and we will investigate and do the best we can to abide by our guidelines. You can see we have a set of community guidelines. So, we have like things that people can be suspended immediately for, like hate speech, insults, sexually explicit content. Some people do make sock puppet accounts for abuse or to like confirm their own IDs, which is um, not allowed on iNaturalist. There are other things we say are okay, and then there are just kind of some tone and attitude and good form kind of suggestions we have for how to best uh, act on a naturalist. So I definitely recommend reading those. And if you do see something that you think violates the guidelines, please flag it, and we'll take a look.
Yes.
And yeah,
Yeah, there are some more interesting questions. So first one is from Jimmy, who is saying that BioBlitz is not yet live, but can we join it at this moment? So basically, he's talking about the
yeah,
IUCN project, which will start after 2 days.
yeah. You can join a. You should be able to join any project if it's if it's public. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the short answer is based on the criteria or the settings of the project, the dates between which the project is supposed to run, any observation you upload at that time will be counted for that project. You don't really have to join that project, it will automatically take it. But Tony, I want to ask you one question, or
Mhm.
maybe suggest that it is becoming very difficult where on the Android screen, the option like, the upload observation screen
Mm.
still shows projects option there. And we get this question a lot of time. Do we have to
Yeah,
manually?
sometimes it doesn't show correctly, right? Yeah, I haven't been able to replicate that, so it's been difficult to fix as a bug. But yeah, thank you. I'm sorry about that.
No, no, I'm talking about the option which is coming on the iNaturalist app on Android where you can enter the name of the project. So I think this is usually for the traditional projects.
Okay.
So for example, for the City Nature Challenge, we don't have to mention that this project is for City Nature Challenge because this will automatically be counted in the project. But
Mm.
and even we tell people that you don't have to add your project to ANC or CNC, but when they upload observation on iNaturalist, they see a option to, select a project manually and then they try
Yeah,
to.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's been interesting. We before every project you had to manually add an observation to it, and then we added collection projects
Hmm.
that just save searches like what you have, and the observations automatically imported into it.
Yes.
And it's very hard to message that, especially on a small screen, that like you don't have to worry about this. Like it'll be included. Um, yeah, I agree. It's yeah, kind of a bit of a UI issue. It's also interesting in that people sometimes they want to be able to add it because they just feel like they are doing like they are taking action like themselves to do this, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
They don't want to
something
take
to
a second chance. What if it get missed? Okay. Next, we have a very interesting question from Suhas. Is there any plan where people or citizens who contribute through iNaturalist get a notification when their observation get used by scientists or researchers? I guess currently there is no process or mechanism for that.
No, there isn't. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how that would work. It's so if someone exports data from GBIF, and that data includes any iNaturalist observations, it becomes part of the DOI number they get, and that can be tracked. And so I think I'm not an engineer, so I don't know exactly how this would all work, but it's it's possible that we could take that DOI number from GBIF, see which observations on GBIF were included, and those also will have a URL to iNaturalist and then link those back. I suspect that would be a bit of a complicated process, but I think it's definitely a request that we hear a lot. Like people want to know, like, ooh, like this specific one is being used, and I want to see exactly how it's being used.
Yeah.
Um, but it currently doesn't exist. But definitely something. I think we want to keep exploring for sure.
Okay. Eddie asks, is there any way to prevent AI photos from being uploaded? Because this is becoming very common for AI photos to be uploaded for different social media.
Yeah. Prevent, probably not ever prevent because people could just strip metadata from from a photo and post it. I think there's some images that will have metadata in them saying they were generated by AI or something, and that is something we want to look into. I will say very soon we're going to have a way to flag AI generated content, or at least or market. So I've been thinking about this a lot. I'm a photo nerd. So there's like stuff that's just generated the whole thing is artificial, right? And so that just doesn't belong on iNet. What I think is more interesting is that there's just a lot of photo editing techniques that are very commonly used now to maybe you want to remove the leaf that's in front of that bird, right? And so you
Yeah,
use generative fill, but it's filling in details that aren't really there.
yeah,
And because we consider photos to be evidence, right? It's not about your prettiest photos. It's like this is evidence of what I saw. I think that's not particularly what we want on iNaturalist. So I've been working on a data quality assessment vote of basically like, is the evidence accurate or not? Um, and that should be out pretty soon. Where if you think, it's sometimes and a lot of these these aren't malicious uses, right? These are people who have a blurry photo and be like, I want to post a good photo with details, and they don't understand that the details are being made up, right? Um, but what I want to add is a way for people to market as, it's not an accurate representation of not of the scene, and so that'll make it casual, and the person can say, hey, this looks like it was altered by AI. Can you please post an unaltered version? And that's just not what's acceptable here on iNatural. It's just a thing for evidence. And so that should be out pretty soon. There's no way to prevent it, but like everything on iNat, it's community work to um, keep the data quality good. And I think eventually, once there's more of a standard, hopefully, there's like Adobe and Apple and Google are working on like adding standard metadata
mm,
to photos that have been altered with generative AI. We can maybe read that and tell the person, hey, like this isn't acceptable. Maybe, if you could revert those changes or something, then post it, something like that
yeah.
would I think
Uh,
be ideal. But this
we
is
have
so new and it's changing so fast.
Yes, we have a similar message in the chat from Mantavya saying, should photos without EXIF data even be allowed? There is no reason to strip the EXIF data off unless there are some ulterior motives at play.
Um, I'm an EXIF person. I like learning about what gear people use and what settings they used. I think there are legitimate reasons to strip it. I think one, again, these observations are public records of where you are or where you were. And so I think maybe someone will see, oh, this person's carrying around a $5,000 camera and they go to this park every week. Um, I think that one way you could, that's one way to keep it's a safety issue. Um, Another is that some people don't want to share their photo techniques. I'm not part of that, but I think uh, that's a legit reason to strip it. And I think, and until recently, like Apple, like if you imported a photo from like Apple, they wouldn't send us the metadata. So I think there are too many, I think there are too many A, legitimate reasons, and B, kind of things that people may not have in their control when it comes to metadata. Um, that I think it's not something we can just ban outright. As far as like, okay, if this photo has no metadata, we won't accept it.
Yeah. Uh, Abhinay is asking, when a team at iNaturalist identifies a species, can they give any identification tips for that? I face this problem a lot, like how they are identifying them, just like that.
Well, just like I showed, let's see, that observation of mine. Oh yeah. It'd be great if people did this all the time, like, said why they were adding an ID, but you can always ask people. So I photographed this wasp. This person identified it to the genus, and I asked him, "Hey, what am I looking for?" And he was able to write, um, this long, which I got to study because I'm not familiar with some of these words, but people will generally help you if you ask them. And that's what I would say for now. It would be great at some point to have like like on the taxon page notes for how to identify something. Apparently, Wikipedia, we link to Wikipedia on taxon pages, but Wikipedia doesn't really allow kind of diagnostic features usually, or like ID tips on their articles. So if we could have something on our own that people could contribute to, or that we could like use from the existing helpful ID comments, that would be great too, just to make it kind of a little more accessible to people. But I would recommend asking people, and that is a social network at heart. It's about people nerding out about their observations.
Yes, and one of the things I tell people with whom we are usually introducing iNaturalist is that please look out for the notification in your app. And if you see any comments on your observations, please go and read those comments and reply to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is a question from Prasad asking, I hope your data and good work is being utilized and leveraged as valuable input by global organizations such as UNESCO, UNEP, IUCN, WWF, etc. as well. Do you have any input or comment on that?
Big international organizations. I'm not as aware of those. They're being used locally. I'm mostly familiar with the US, but like a lot of like each state in the US has like its own kind of natural heritage organization for conservation, and they're like INAT, like we need like INAT data are becoming really important for us to know where things are. So where can we put our conservation resources? How can like like this threatened species is appearing in this area. We need to like focus on that. So a lot of these more local organizations are using them for sure. And even like small like city parks. Someone I know in Texas is like, you know, uh, they'll be able to say like, look at all these observations by this many people in this park. Like people want this park. Like this is a valuable thing for these people. And so we should keep it open, or we should make sure that we focus on its biodiversity because people are using it for its biodiversity. I imagine ICN and other organizations are using on that data as well, but I'm not as familiar with their usage.
Yeah, just one example is this webinar. This is conducted as part of the IUCN's Citizen Science Task Force, and we are taking up more work of iNaturalist. Okay, so with that, I think we are ready to wrap the session. Anukriti, can you please paste the link of IUCN BioGrids once again on the chat section? And
Yes,
if anyone
definitely.
has any more questions, you can write an email to me. Anukriti, please mention that email as well.
Yes.
Yes, Anukriti, anything else we need to take care?
No, I think we're good to go. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And we will keep you updated about the upcoming webinars as well. In the meantime, please do sign up on iNaturalist. As Tony said, it's a lifestyle. Once you start doing it, there's no way to stop. And iNaturalist is the only thing I will ever say that about, that it's an addiction. At least for me, it is.
Yes, and we also had one session from Carlos for last year's
Oh, cool.
Asian Asia Challenge. So we are also going to share the link of that Carlos's session as well. And as Tony mentioned, amazing things from his work. His talk is also amazing. You can go and check out that as well. Okay,
All
so
right.
with that, I would like to thank all of you to please thank you very much for joining for this session today. We will send the link of the recording. Okay, thank you very much, Tony, for joining us today and taking out time from your busy schedule. We will share more details about the IUCN's BioGrids with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
So much,
Bye.
Tony.
Thank you, everyone.